guarantee you that after watching this video, you are going to fall in love with literature. Here is To Autumn, written by John Keats. Now, what's the context behind this poem? Keats was inspired to write this poem after he was walking alongside the river Itchen in 1819. The focus on passage of time in this poem may have been because Keats died at the young age of 25 from tuberculosis, so the passage of his time in his life flashed back really quickly. Right, let's move on to the poem. This poem is an ode, and an ode is typically written in glorification or praise of something. In this case, that's autumn, okay? And they typically have 10 lines a stanza. However, this poem has 11 lines a stanza, and that may highlight the bountiful, plentiful, abundant nature of autumn. Okay, let's move on to the first stanza. The first stanza highlights the symbiotic nature between man and nature. With fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, okay? That highlights that the roofs of the houses, which are made of thatch, they're lined with vines, and in the gardens of these cottages there are apple trees, okay? That highlights that nature and man are in close proximity of one another. There is an abundance of natural imagery embedded within this first stanza as well. Fill fruit with ripeness to the core, sweet kernel. A kernel is the seed of a particular fruit, and swell the gourd. That highlights the ripening process and the fact that autumn makes things sweeter and tastier, okay? And a gourd is a type of fruit, including a pumpkin. The stanza ends with a criticism of summer, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. So the cells of the bees have become sticky, clammy means sticky, and this is a criticism of summer, highlighting that autumn is the best season. And this is understandable as Keats was a romantic poet. We can see that there's a clear sequence of events in this poem. First stanza is about pre-harvest, second stanza is about the harvest, and third stanza is about the death of autumn, okay? The autumn goes away. Now in the second stanza we can see, who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Who hasn't seen autumn in their storehouse, okay? It's a praise of autumn, the fact that it's so useful and ever present in everyone's lives, okay? And then we could begin to see some foreshadowing of the last stanza, okay? Obviously we see half-reaped furrow sound asleep, so a furrow is a line made by a plough, and in general the second stanza is very much focused on the harvest and the arduous nature of the harvest. Obviously we've got gleaner, someone that collects the crop, and all of this stuff is the arduous imagery of the harvest. And now at the end we see an image of the grim reaper, okay, with the swath, etc, etc. Now this highlights the foreshadowing in the next stanza, where we see the gathering swallows twittering in the sky, soft dying day, and we have pathetic fallacy with the barred clouds. This highlights that autumn is dying. However, since the swallows migrate south, this highlights that autumn is ending. However, the swallows will eventually migrate back north, and this highlights that autumn will eventually come back. But the soft dying day is a use of pathetic fallacy, and that's used to highlight the sadness of autumn leaving. Thank you for watching, and that's it for To Autumn by John Keats.